My name is Keith Magnay. I'm an historian, journalist, an author, and an astrologer. Today is the inauguration day of Donald Trump as the 45th President of the United States. And many of you will be aware of the controversy surrounding his presidency. During his presidential campaigns, he was very maverick. He insulted a lot of major groups, including Mexicans, African Americans, Muslims, the Chinese. His period of presidency is likely to be full of shocks. The USA, the American people, currently feel very insecure. They conceive themselves being toppled as the #1 country. They have a lot of economic woes, not just the huge debts that the American government has racked up, but also the concern that the dollar, the US dollar, will be dethroned as the backbone of the world currency. They have been in conflicts with Russia over Syria, and also with China over the China Seas. But I too am also concerned for the future of the USA, not for these economic or domestic or international problems that President-elect Donald Trump faces, but because of an upcoming eclipse which goes right across the USA this August. If you look at the red line here is the line of the totality. It enters the USA on the west coast at Portland, Oregon, goes through the Midwest, right through the center of the US, and exits in South Carolina. I'm the author of a book called The Wheels of God. That's wheels spelled W-H-E-A-L-S, implying that these eclipses are like whippings. They whip mankind. And in the wake of eclipses, in this book, where I have over 100 examples, I have connected eclipses to all the major conflicts that the world has experienced, whether it's been in North America, South America, Africa, Europe, China, Russia. The history, all the textbook dates of modern history have been punctuated by eclipses around the time and the place of these significant events. Amongst them have been events such as the Taiping Rebellion in 1849, which led to the deaths of 20 to 40 million people. Eclipses have marked the major conflicts of the present age. For example, this was an eclipse that went over Eastern Europe at the exact time of the outbreak of the First World War. They went across the Baltics, and then over Riga, Vilnius, Minsk and Kiev, and it went down into eastern Turkey. What followed in its wake was something like 8 years of warfare, initially between Austria-Hungary and Germany and Russia, and then subsequently between the Soviets and the nationalists, once the Germans had lost the First World War. In eastern Turkey, the line of the eclipse, the Armenian massacres took place a year later, exactly here, these points here. This is where the Armenian massacres, the first modern genocide, recognized. But what I also found was that 2 years earlier, the Western Front had been eclipsed. This eclipse went over Belgium and over northern France, where subsequently the trench warfare of the First World War took place. 4 years of stalemate and terrible murders. Interestingly, the Kaiser's army went through Belgium and reached central Belgium. Kaiser's army came through here, and then it wheeled down into northern France, following the exact line of the eclipse. I found many examples of this where warring groups would advance as far as the line of the exact eclipse. I also found an eclipse for the Second World War. The Second World War was fought on two fronts, in the Pacific and in Europe. About the time the eclipse, the Spanish Civil War started, and shortly afterwards Japan invaded China. This eclipse went through the northern Caucasus and down into North Africa. North Africa became a major theatre of war between the British, Americans and Germans. Also the German army, when it invaded Russia, got as far as the line of the eclipse, the Caucasus. Korea today is a divided peninsula between north and south. Just 4 months before it was divided, in the wake of Japan losing the Second World War, an eclipse went over the peninsula, almost exactly where they divided it between north and south. It's still a legacy today, with the north threatening the south and the USA with war. Same thing happened to Vietnam. In 1955, Vietnam was divided between north and south. This particular eclipse, a short period before the division took place, went exactly over the line that where the division occurred. This section here is the demilitarizer, which a second eclipse went over this 4 years later, and that's when the north and the south started fighting. Some eclipses can mark out epochs. Now, this eclipse occurred in July 1945. It was shortly after Berlin had been taken by the Allies, the Russians in the east and the Americans, British and French in the west. This is almost exactly the time that Stalin announced that, or instructed the Red Army to stop fraternizing with the Allies, and the Cold War began. This eclipse started in northwest USA, went over Greenland and the Arctic, and then went past Moscow. It defined the two protagonists of the Cold War. This Cold War ended, although some would say it's been reignited, in 1990, when there was another eclipse that went over Russia, went over northern Russia, and in its wake the Soviet Union collapsed. So we can see that eclipses can define protagonists, can define periods of historical time. The one that we're in, which is the most serious in my view, is an eclipse which occurred in August 1999. It occurred with a Grand Cross in fixed signs, and when an eclipse happens in points in the zodiac like that, its impact can last for a very long time. This particular eclipse rose in the North Atlantic off the coast of the USA. It went across Europe, through Britain, France, Germany, and down through the Balkans into the Middle East, where it went through eastern Syria, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Subsequently, we've seen major conflicts in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, but it also suggests that Europe, there will be a blowback into Europe, and we've seen that in recent terrorist incidents in Berlin, we've seen them in London, Paris, and I believe that this is only the start. It's going to get a lot more serious in future. There was a partial eclipse over North Africa at the same time as the so-called Arab Spring erupted. There were revolts in Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Syria, Bahrain at this particular point in time. This particular eclipse was also visible in the Ukraine. There have been a lot of tensions between the USA and China over control of the China Seas. This came into the wake of this particular eclipse, which was rose in the Bay of Tonkin, just off Vietnam, went over the eastern seaboard of China, the eastern seaboard of Japan, across the North Pacific, and down into the USA, finishing in Texas. It actually went over the islands where the first significant dispute started between Japan and China. Once again, I don't believe that this particular eclipse has worked itself through. President-elect Trump has already started to pull the beard of the Chinese government, and there's the possibility of a significant conflict arising over China's building over Europe and over Northern Europe, and in its wake there was a significant rise in conflicts between Europe and Russia, between NATO and Russia. Subsequently, NATO's had exercises in Norway and the Baltics. It's just deployed more troops in Poland, and the tensions between Russia and US and Europe have raised considerably. So we have to ask ourselves, what does the eclipse over the USA in August, what likely impact will that have on President Trump's period in office? The omens do not look very good. From my experience of other eclipses, they are always a significant event, often violent, often bloody, and often involving a shift in power. So if you'd like to see more of the correlation between eclipses and shifts in geopolitical power, the name of the book is The Wheels of God. It's available on Amazon. This book has very serious implication. It offers a new paradigm of how the historical process works, and it has great import for world leaders and for mankind. If we are being seriously affected by eclipses here on Earth, and it's causing us to become violent and for powerful organizations to start fighting each other, then it has some major consequences. I do believe that everybody who is in a position of significant power should read this book and understand it. And then that includes the Secretary General of the United Nations, the President of the United States, the Pope in the Vatican, the leaders of China in Beijing, and the leaders of Russia in the Kremlin. Modern weaponry is so horrendous nowadays and so lethal that the consequences of powerful individuals being forced over a threshold to unleash terrible weapons, the consequences of that are just too much to contemplate. It's a very important book. I think it's comparable to Darwin's Origin of the Species and to Copernicus's writings on astronomy. It changes the way that we should look at ourselves upon this planet. Instead of blaming each other, we should blame these astronomical forces that are unleashed through eclipses. It's a very significant book. I offer it to the world as a personal legacy, and I hope that there are enough wise people in the world to appreciate its full meaning and can utilize it more fully. There's a need to calm things down, otherwise the consequences are just dreadful. Okay, well, thank you for listening, and cheers.